TCS Innovation Forum is hosted by TCS Co-Innovation Network and chaired by TCS CTO K. Anant Krishnan. It provides a platform to collaborate and innovate with technology researchers and peers across industries through panel discussions and interactive sessions. Despite the challenges that exist today around cloud computing, TCS believes that it will become an increasingly viable option for enterprise IT. In the US Innovation Forum, the panelists discuss varied aspects from cloud readiness of environments to exploration of new business models, exchange experiences on challenges and opportunities of living in the cloud. Talking about the operational aspects of cloud, Pat Filotio states,
virtually all of the technology is if not directly transferable, very nearly so, into the cloud environment. There's some allowances you need to make for the fact that you're moving from one ecosystem into a different ecosystem. But fundamentally, it's still running Windows services or providing services to end users. You're still doing data access. You may use a different connection string or a different paradigm, but fundamentally, you're just providing data access and a presentation layer, and these are all well understood problems. And so we work through those. But when we do get these first apps up, a lot of times where we see people struggle is actually absorbing the operational aspects of it. And it's kind of it's interesting to watch because everything in the cloud, it really doesn't matter which cloud vendor you go with because we're all doing basically the same type of billing model, but it's all micro billing. And so in a lot of ways, this concept of TCO doesn't really exist in the cloud because TCO is really a logical construct for measuring something that's very, very hard to measure. Actually, as it turns out, has a real bearing on what your costs will be and how you choose to monitor and manage these operational costs have a non-trivial impact on what the billing will be. But when you go to the cloud, suddenly there's a spotlight. And you can see per application precisely what those resources being consumed are. So anyway, so a lot of times we see these apps when they first move. The other aspect is pulling in that reporting and management and into the existing processes. Because frankly, no matter how great the public cloud is, how scalable it is, how secure it is, there are fundamentally I don't see anybody decommissioning data centers for the foreseeable future. And quite probably, my youngest may start to see the first of those get shut down, but and he's only about yay tall. So the reality is there's logistical issues, there's legal issues, there's frankly emotional attachment issues that we have to work through, and these are a long, slow process. These are generational problems. And as a result, anything that we do in the public cloud needs to integrate with this, it's a pragmatic exercise. We have to be able to integrate back with the existing systems, and we have to be able to play nicely together. And that means, being able to pull the same metrics at the same level of granularity that you would get on premise should also be true in the cloud. There's this inverse correlation between utilization of the resources and the aggregate size of the pool of resources that you use. If we keep that operational excellence in the back of our head, one of the early wins you can go for is go find these applications that have poor utilization curves. And so it could be that MapReduce was mentioned earlier, but that's just one scenario, but it's a good illustrative exercise. We can actually improve the organization as a whole, even though we're doing very, very tactical things to begin with, while we start to build these muscles. And we start to figure out what works and what doesn't, and how are we going to update, how are we going to report, and what's the budgeting going to look like, and is there a licensing impact, and all of these questions that we need to work through, because these have all evolved over decades, but we still get these early gains. A very common one, like I said, is parallel computing type problems, transactions, batch jobs. Those are all great ones. We have some new technology coming out very soon that will allow you to run the compute aspects in the cloud, but you leave the data where it is, so we avoid this data at rest kind of problem. Another great one is short-lived enterprise websites. You know, it's kind of this classic marketing problem where we want to do a marketing campaign, we want to spool up a website. I use like every movie that comes out gets its own website, but it's really only a viable website for about 90 days or so. And so you could spin those up. A lot of times, to be honest with you, what trips up projects isn't the technology. It really comes down to picking the right workflows, if you will, where there's some projects where it's better to either do them entirely on premise or do them entirely in the cloud, but not share. Because the amount of data transfer, the amount of round trips, and again, these are all micro charges, right? Every step you take, there's an incremental charge. Where if you don't go far enough, you don't really cross the air gap, and then you fall, and it's bad news for everybody. But if we can find those projects where we can make a quantum step forward, then you get all the goodness without taking as big a hit.
In the next part, Devdutt Yellurkar speaks about virtualization and the trends he sees in cloud.
SaaS is a new delivery model. We spoke about it. A bunch of you guys have adopted it. And I think cloud will be the new infrastructure. You know, we think that it's a ways away right now, you know, as you're talking about. I think we are still digesting virtualization. We have yet, that is server virtualization, we have to get to desktop and storage virtualization, and eventually we'll get to the cloud. But there's some ramps being created. At a macro level, there are three trends that as a VC we watch. The first is consumerization of enterprise technology. I think if you look at your employee base right now, and look at the people in power, the millennial plus one crowd, the 25 to 40 crowd. They've grown up on Facebook, Twitter. You know, they're very comfortable with technology. They really, you know, they're dragging IT along with them. The second trend I think we are watching is, if you look inside Facebook, or you look inside Google, or if you look inside Twitter, the technologies that they use to scale are completely different than the technologies we are comfortable with. And from an IT perspective, I think that will be a great way to look at as Web 2.0 hits the enterprise, and enterprises need to start dealing with unstructured data. How is all that going to get managed? So that's, again, the trend that VCs are watching. And the third big trend is, of course, cloud computing. Or actually the cloud, both the private and the public side. And the intersection of these three trends is where the real opportunity for companies like us, for partnerships like us, and for people like people in this audience. The cost efficiency that virtualization completely gives is yet to live out its potential. And once you get to a completely private cloud environment, then you start looking at, is a public cloud the next version of data center outsourcing? Total outsourcing to the cloud is yet to come, or may come over a period of time. For VCs like us, we think it should come sooner than his youngest going to college, or whatever, what are you guys talking about? But I think that is, I think, you know, we think there's a lot of work still left within the enterprise before it goes completely to the cloud. But if I look at companies who are using the cloud today, and the reason why they're using it, it makes it, you know, it's infinitely scalable. It's metered billing, so it's pay as you go. And I think the most important is it's OpEx, not CapEx. And it's a variable cost, so you can kind of turn it up and down very easily. You don't have to go into the whole ROI discussion with the CEO or the CFO. The four places where we see a lot of activity right now, the first are SaaS vendors. These companies are more cost efficient to build. The first thing that they're doing is they're using cloud extensively. So they're building these multi-tenanted architectures in the cloud. The cloud economics are in your favor right now, so you can really, you know, tighten the screws in that. And the third is, I think, sales and distribution has become very simple. You know, businesses are going online. But from a cloud perspective, I think this cost of development and cost of deployment are the two reasons why SaaS vendors are eating their own. I think these kinds of applications where you require spike, whether it's retail processing at the end of the year or whether it's genome sequencing, these kinds of things we are seeing moving to the cloud, and I think the cloud economics work beautifully for that. The third is, and you're talking about this, which is dev test training environment. We have found dev and test is absolutely, there's a good way to kind of consolidate servers. The issue is really licensing. We are seeing very, very early signs that large enterprises in the insurance space, in the healthcare space, in the energy space, that really don't know how to deal with unstructured data. And there's a tremendous opportunity here for using these new technologies that emerged in Web 2.0 and bring them into the cloud, bring them into the enterprise.
Peter Rubenacker now talks about the importance of cloud in the workplace.
Public cloud, there's plenty of opportunities there. Does it weigh into the good enough analogy, relevant analogy? It may not be the most secure. It may not be the most cost effective at times. It may not be the best control situation. But is it good enough? So, it may not necessarily be a particular strategy, or it's a particular, this is the best new thing since sliced bread. I would say the approach is, interesting offering, relevant for a particular set of situations. Do we get out of our data center, our own data center? I don't necessarily see it as a huge transformative thing. But certainly something to consider, certainly something to value in the equation. The threat of job loss, right? The equation of cost, right? Less upfront cost because you're off in this, pay-as-you-go type analogy. You're really swapping one for another, really. Is one better than another? Don't think so. The reality is this generation of employees are going to come along. They're going to expect these tools in their workplace. They're going to act and operate in this way. So you got to kind of bend and twist to what the opportunity is going to be for you. So there's a certain amount of some paradigm shifting that's going to happen. But I would say for us, overall, we've done the private cloud thing. I think we could probably copy-paste the EMC presentation for ourselves. We're in the public cloud space, yes, but it's in the Darwinian view of the world, it's another thing to kind of adapt to. Whether it's necessarily going to change the world or not, not so sure.
Dr. Gautam Shroff highlights about the business model of cloud and its application in BPOs, and also about exploiting cloud computing for large-scale analytics.
I'm just going to talk about what do we, from two things we've missed out. One is business model. What does cloud give us? It gives us pay-per-use, it gives us speed of provisioning, and it gives me a service which is commoditized. The question I want to ask is, where else do these three things apply? I'm going to focus on what we're seeing from a services perspective as a challenge, from the business models to from the outsourced services perspective, KPO, BPO opportunities. What we're already seeing is the pay-per-use concept. The outcome-based pricing, whether you're paying payroll per pay slip or per transaction, it's already happening. We do that all the time now. We're no longer charging or billing on FTEs, and the old style BPO is going out of the window. But the other two dimensions are probably challenges which we can probably think about in the discussion and maybe innovate together. So the rapid provisioning. So it takes time to onboard a payroll outsourcing, right? How do I commoditize it enough, both internally within the enterprise as well as externally with the offerings that someone like TCS could have, so that onboarding process can become even more sort of commoditized, easy to provision, right? And then how do I make the service itself commoditized? Right? How do I break up business processes into chunks which are sort of easy to discern as easy as maybe a server virtualized. I mean, it's a difficult concept to think about, but if you take the logical step of a cloud service and apply it to an outsourced service, it's a natural step to go. And there clearly are some ways to go in thinking conceptually around this process, and we're making a few first steps in that direction. So when we talk about cloud in the future, we're really talking about the business model of cloud. Okay, that was one point I wanted to make. The second point I wanted to make is the point which I think Devdutt mentioned, and it's something that we're investing in now. How do we use some of the technologies which are powering Facebook's, Google, and other unstructured data management organizations? How do we leverage them into enterprise, and for what do we leverage them into enterprise? So we're today working on a concept which we have now a few customers. We're trying to ask the question, what's the next stage of BI and analytics, right? And we're calling it something, we're giving it a name, we're calling it Enterprise Information Fusion. It's not an offering. The idea is to take stuff from the outside, Twitter, news, stuff that your Salesforce talks about in the field, conversations that they have with customers, what customers actually say. Take data from inside the enterprise, not by having plumbing, but by having search-based approach to data integration, and have a bunch of analytical tools running automatically to try to discern impact on enterprise risk, performance, and relationships. So we're trying to get that off the ground. We have some ideas, we have some pilots, and we're thinking that maybe this is something which is a way of leveraging these technologies to do something new, which is the future in the BI analytics space. What we're doing in TCS in the cloud, only to say that from the infrastructure perspective, we are actually providers of software as a service in India. We are actually both in the small and medium business space as well as in the banking space, and of course the BPO services, the design and build private clouds you've seen.
For any feedback and queries, do write to us. For more information, you can visit our websites.